What is up, guys? Welcome to Double KO Radio. My name is Poe, and if you're unfamiliar with the channel, I want to do a little reaction on this the fighting game that never got a chance, Granblue Fantasy versus video that Akshon Esports did, just to see how I'd react. You know, I'm trying to do different types of video in the YouTube for Double KO Radio this year, and I just want to try out reacting to something maybe I should have some kind of commentary on, since the last year and a half has primarily been me doing showcase type of videos for this game. So let's see.
Over the last decade, Arc System Works has been dominating the fighting game scene. With Guilty Gear Xrd, they shattered the standards of what an anime fighter could look like. Then, with Dragon Ball FighterZ, they briefly united top players from across the FGC under one game based on an iconic IP. After this, they would make one of the wildest crossover fighters with BlazBlue Cross Tag Battle, and finally, they redefined the online experience with Guilty Gear Strive. But in the midst of all their success, one game got the short end of the stick. 2 years after BlazBlue, and just a few months after Strive's announcement, ArcSys released a fighter that, despite receiving a ton of hype, seemingly vanished before it even had a chance to be seen. Today, we're going to be talking about what happened to Granblue Fantasy Versus.
What came out around that time?
Granblue Fantasy is a browser and mobile role-playing game developed by Cygames, which was released.
What came out around that time? Did anything come out around when Granblue came out? Let me check. Okay, so right before Granblue came out, Street Fighter V released its Champion Edition. Now this is weird to me, because this is, you look at Granblue Fantasy, and based off of what the announcer just said, like, all that data that you just got, you got the BB tag, the Dragon Ball Fighters, and the Guilty Gear, and you're thinking, well, yeah, all those games kinda are kinda nuts with anime complicated type of mechanics and movement options, and how the characters look in this game come close to that art style, right? But they're more geared towards people who would like Street Fighter V Champion Edition. So what's the big incentive on them, on that kind of player transferring over fully to Granblue Fantasy Versus, when there doesn't seem to be, at least around that time, anything that Granblue had to offer over an established fighter like Street Fighter V, that at that time too was having a lot of good press, you know. So let's see. And Granblue, this was the last. I'm pretty sure this was like the last. This was gonna be. They were an Evo game, so this was pushed a little early because that's just how it works. So Granblue was releasing with less characters too, and it's all that kind of stuff. For me, it's always like an Evo thing when I look at the time frame. When you see a game that you feel could have been released a little later, I think is always trying to push for that Evo ready title. Then that's how important Evo is to like the cycle of when these games get released. But yeah, let me continue.
Granblue Fantasy is a browser and mobile role-playing game developed by Cygames, which was released in Japan in 2014.
Shout outs to everybody that has watched all my videos from this fandom. Thank you very much.
It features music and art from Nobuo Uematsu,
Yo, the god,
who had worked together on Final Fantasy V, 6, and 9, as well as Lost Odyssey, and the game quickly developed a massive following, surpassing 25 million downloads by the end of 2019. And so, creative director Tetsuya Fukuhara and Cygames commissioned Arc System Works to produce a fighting game with the hopes of bringing more awareness to their franchise overseas. And awareness they got.
Dude, for in-game graphics, damn.
Oh no, an ad.
Holy
Sorry, an ad just happened.
These 3D models are ridiculous.
and it's easy to see why the game garnered
Beautiful
so much
game.
early excitement. A popular IP brought to
Why
life
does the
with
stage
stunning
look different?
visuals by the same studio that
Why does
created
the stage look
GBVS.
different?
It seemed like success
I don't
was
remember
all
that.
but guaranteed, and with a spot locked for the main stage at
Right there, see, like I mentioned, this was locked in for Evo. Under Night in Birth, shout outs to that game for destroying my left hand and me having further hand issues for the next 2 years. Look at that Marvel Tournament of Champions. Oh man, that's one thing I was really excited for. Samurai Showdown second Evo appearance, Granblue Fantasy, and MVC2 was something I was really looking forward to that year.
At EVO 2020, it looked like Granblue was going to be a major FGC title for years to come. And Granblue had one more thing pushing it forward: accessibility.
The conversation of accessibility in fighting games is going to come up very frequently. It's definitely a pretty big talking point, if not a point of controversy in the fighting game community. However, I would definitely say that Granblue executed it really well.
The game itself is...
And they continue to separate the gap too from how much benefit you get from using the easy inputs as opposed to inputting the actual motion inputs too in the game.
This very promoting of patient play and rewards people for putting a lot of work. I think a lot of people gave it flack for being maybe a little bit too simple on release, but I think that as the metagame's been developed...
Simple or not, no matter what, you're all going to be fighting against other human brains trying to beat you. That's where the complication's going to come.
And as people have gotten better at it, it's definitely shown a lot of nuance.
One of the most
Nuances too, like that's the thing though, with the nuances in games, you're going to get a lot less of them. Because whether you get nuances and all that stuff for matchups and all that as the game grows, like as you see on the screen here, there's Tekken. You know, in Tekken, one Tekken character has more moves than the entirety of Granblue's starting roster. You know what I mean? Like, and that's just one out of like the 40 plus characters Tekken has right now. So there's gonna be way more nuance in other games, and that's where the simplicity comes in, and then maybe even like how the game plateaus when it comes to growth later in the future. Games like that, games of that type, for people, certain people. Some people don't even care.
intimidating parts of learning a fighting game is the execution of moves. Traditionally, fighting game inputs are complex.
And I think it's I think it's funny that they show Tekken, because Tekken is very complex. Tekken is very execution heavy, but when it comes to moves and inputs, I think they're among more towards the easier realm of fighting game, because you got so many Tekken heads that are casual, almost like Mortal Kombat 11. Like, their inputs aren't difficult as well. They're all directional. They're not, like, for the most part, motion inputs, right? Tekken as well, for the most part, right? But it leads to casual players feeling like there's just they compress stuff and magic will happen, especially in Tekken.
Precise and have a very short timing window if you want to do something properly.
Woo! Oh, I did it!
Yeah, see, the high level stuff, that's great. Some casual in Tekken face rolling or you know, just kind of mashing away on their controller is gonna whip that out eventually, and they're gonna do it once and never do it again, because one character has like 100 variations on what move could come out at any moment in that game.
And hit combo! 83 damage. That's hard to do, but it works.
Dragon Ball FighterZ attempted to lower this barrier for entry with its auto combo system, But Granblue pushed this further with a unique spin.
People like to bring up all the time.
I thought auto combos were in other games before Dragon Ball. Anyway,
There's no resource management in Granblue Fantasy Versus, but when you consider the fact that we have the cooldown system, which not only helps to bridge that issue by adding in cooldown management, it's a really interesting take.
Dragon Ball could use cooldown system, to be honest. I'm kidding, but you know, I'm just, that was me more joking about how random people are. Just have a cooldown on Super Dash. But what he's mentioning now, Che Benji, and I have seen plenty of his videos. They do a lot of, I don't know if they still do, but they did a lot of weeklies for Granblue Fantasy. But yeah, the cooldown, I think for casuals, like, would probably be one of the harder things in the game, keeping track of your moves and when you can do them again.
For sure, and giving new players the option in not just, you know, general gameplay, but in specific situations to opt for easy input, basically single directional input plus a button. It's clearly had an effect already with other games like Multiple Type Lumina.
Rather,
I like doing the normal inputs, by the way, but more often than not, I'm just talking about me as a player, I did not motion input DPs like 90% of the time, no matter what.
Rather than rely exclusively on command inputs, Granblue used a cooldown system similar to what you might see in an action RPG. With simple button presses, players could fire off their special abilities, and although these moves could also be...
These are also really, really, really good in the RPG mode, by the way. The input system, because you're going like left and right at a moment's whim with enemies going behind you, so this, especially for that mode, works really well.
Activated with advanced inputs to lower the cooldown, this system significantly lowered the barrier for entry for new players. Granblue Fantasy Versus released in February of 2020 in Japan and made its way to North America by March. The game received largely positive reviews from both fighting game fans and critics, and just like GBVS, it had everyone from Sonic Fox to Leffen streaming something new.
This game, kind of like Dragon Ball, it had a lot of like cross-game rivalries where there's people from like, this guy's like a KOF player up against like, you know, this guy who's known for playing Melty Blood, and this guy's known for playing Dragon Ball.
I think it sucks. I'm reading what the SageM's tweet says. It sucks, yes, right? That we didn't get that, really. But even with, you can say that about every game coming out afterward, and kind of during too, right? Because other than Strive, it's been a little tough for. I mean, even in Strive, it's been a little tough for this to be happening. For kind of a mingling of different regions playing against each other. Like it's happened before, so there is a history of it for the other games, but it's still not happening for anybody up until very recently.
This guy's known for playing Dengeki Bunko, Fighting Climate, like everybody from all over the place, right? That was something that's really interesting about Granblue.
There were some critiques, but the game was quickly developing a community of competitors and fans eagerly awaiting the start of the tournament season.
There were some critiques. What a very smart, kind way to say things about how people react about like every new fighting games when they have negative stuff to say.
As we already mentioned, Granblue was selected as a main game for EVO and also had a slot in Arc System Works' international circuit, the Arc World Tour. The stage was set for Granblue to become a mainstay series in the FGC, but there was one thing no one had
That Super's cheap.
accounted for.
Oh no, another ad. Yeah, this thing sucks. We all
There was a
know
lot of
that.
eyes on the game initially as an EVO title, and lots of other major tournaments as well having a pretty keen focus on it. There was a lot of promise for the game, and whilst I don't think that promise has necessarily been wasted as a result of the online era, there's obviously been all sorts of adversity in the FGC in general, and a lot of the major tournaments and a lot of the major infrastructure having to be changed pretty dramatically over the past couple of years. as a result of the shift more towards, well, the forcible shift towards online.
Well before Granblue actually launched, some players were already raising concerns about the lack of rollback netcode.
Well, that's really old too, because it still said Guilty Gear delay-based netcode. Oh, look at that list though. Look at that list. King of Fighters isn't even out, has rollback now. Guilty Gear has the best rollback for right now for a fighting game.
We've spoken a lot on this channel about the impact rollback netcode can have on a fighting game scene, but many Japanese developers have largely ignored this concern.
Terrible
for years,
internet.
continuing to push
Terrible
out games
netcode this game.
that play great at an in-person tournament, but are nearly unplayable
Oh my god, look at all those germs. Look at all those people back there. No thank you, not after this.
online. While this issue is not limited to Granblue's devs, there were plenty of examples out in the world of games of smaller teams with lower budgets creating fantastic online experiences for their players. Fighting game developers seem to be the exception. And sadly, we all know what comes next.
Japanese fighting game developers to correct him. NRS has good netcode, right? NRS has good netcode.
The fighting game community was hit harder than any other esports scene by the COVID-19 pandemic. The loss of in-person events meant that every fighting game scene suddenly had to face the reality of their weak online infrastructure, and Granblue was no different. The game's other issues became more glaring. First was Granblue's poor launch strategy. The month-long wait between the Japanese and
This was a little weird.
international releases, coupled with an even longer delay for the PC version, created significant confusion even among popular streamers.
How was I supposed to know that? That was the least clear of... Well, to be fair, these are supposed to be played in the language you understand.
Then, the game's 12-fighter roster felt far too small to justify it being a $60 title.
Whoa, this is we've talked about this before on the channel. Every time a new game, well, I had a list, right? Every time, this is a new IP to fighting games. Anytime there is a brand spanking new IP to fighting games, I don't think roster, unless it's like 4 characters and you're paying $60 for it, is more or less, this is more or less on par and better than some when it comes to all the other franchises, that if you equal their first version, like the first version of Tekken, the first version of Street Fighter, the first version of all these games that are meant to be one-on-one, not even a team-based fighter, have more or less this amount of characters with much less to offer in the single player part of the game, because this has a very extensive single player experience. Whether you like it or not, it's still an extensive experience if you choose to spend your time on it.
Now,
With rewards like weapons and stuff that you can use online.
COVID hadn't hit, and Granblue had had the time to develop a proper offline scene, these early stumbles might have been less glaring. By all accounts, the gameplay was, and is, sick.
I'm gonna spot dodge.
It's funny that they mentioned the gameplay is sick, because if there's anything that I think is a detriment, or was a detriment to this game really taking off, is the gameplay, because it's not like, this thing has a lot of the same weaknesses, like let's say that Dragon Ball has with its online infrastructure, right? But Dragon Ball is one of the strongest IPs you could use to have a game with weaknesses, because people are just gonna play the game no matter what. It's like Nintendo stands, right? All these Nintendo fanboys, there's so much negative stuff Nintendo has done over the years, but because it's Nintendo, there's like these there's almost like this this veil over their eyes where they're always forgivable, right? Like however Dragon Ball is online is forgivable compared to Granblue because of the IP. But the thing is with Granblue, I think it has just as good, if not better, netcode than Dragon Ball, but this game is struggling more because of the IP. And Dragon Ball's netcode is more crucial because in Granblue you've got combos that last like 4 seconds for the most part, all the time. 2 to 4 seconds. That's a combo in Granblue, unless it's in the corner. But in Dragon Ball, there's so many more. Even if it's the simpler when it comes to, or like less difficult when it comes to older team-based fighting games, there's still a lot of moments in those combos that you really would like to not have that delay in your fighting game.
Oh, it fucking works!
And high-level play is satisfying for players and entertaining for viewers. But unfortunate timing robbed
that too, entertaining for viewers. This isn't as entertaining for most people that look at this and go, oh cool, an anime fighter. This is the most tame an anime fighter can be for what people like to look at or see or do when it comes to an anime quote-unquote fighter.
Granblue of any chance to build that offline momentum, so the only experience anyone ever had with the game was online on delay-based netcode.
A large portion of what makes fighting games special to me, especially compared to other esports, is just how social they are and how...
Look at all those germs, all those people breathing on each other. No masks. Crazy how it used to be, right? Look at all that. Just people just bumping into each other, breathing each other's air. Anyway.
Sort of, I guess, down to earth the events are. If you're a huge Dota fanatic, you can't like show up to TI and play. But for like a fighting game, you can show up to Evo and play, and that's just the norm. Losing that is definitely not a good look for any fighting game, much less one that has delay-based netcode.
Let's take a moment to compare Granblue to a game like Street Fighter V.
Oh, this is
Both
something
games
I've been
have
doing.
Notoriously bad netcode and are routinely criticized by popular influencers.
Street Fighter V on release was one of the worst games I've ever played. You could rage quit with them.
One of the worst, yeah, and that cost me $60. Had about as many characters to play as Granblue, had like 12. That cost me $60. Didn't have story mode yet. That cost me $60.
No problems. It didn't have any features. It was extremely bad.
However, Street Fighter has a massive community and decades of legacy behind it. So poor netcode isn't a make or break for Street Fighter's brand. Granblue, on the other hand, was just getting started in the FGC.
I still gotta finish season 2 of this anime.
And needed a strong start to have any hope of surviving. Today, according to Steam charts, the PC version of Street Fighter V averages nearly 2,000 active players, while Granblue sits at just over 50.
Yeah, this part is the I think the toughest part of why I stopped. Like, this is the most crucial part as to why I stopped playing a long time ago. Is when I have time to play, it is not at the usual peak time for my region. So a lot of the times when I would go online, and there'd just be no one, like no one online in the lobbies. So that was tough, and it would be like several instances of that happening where it just becomes like you just kind of stop trying.
With the FGC fed up with the poor netcode and the online era beginning, ArcSys would put a lot of care into making sure Guilty Gear Strive had a great online experience. Now,
they put a lot of effort into having good word of mouth before this game came out.
Strive has one of the healthiest online ecosystems in the scene, complete with its own developer-supported circuit. And while it's tragic that Granblue just barely had to pay for the pre-existing problems of fighting game releases, it will hopefully be the last major release to suffer such a blow.
Shit, another ad. All right, another
I did a
ad.
tweet yesterday. A lot of people seemed to agree with it, I guess, and then there was a few people who didn't. And I said, if not for COVID, I think GBVS would have some of the most interesting international competition and incredible top 8s of 2020 IMO.
I agree. I agree that is still possible. Well, it was. This was made a long time ago, right? The footage and the tweet, but right now it's looking like it could happen eventually. Cross our fingers, right? With all the stuff still going on, but there are events happening. I think it would be cool and would still happen because there are places internationally that still run. There are places internationally all over that run weeklies for this game. There's South America, Europe, and the big ones that Cygames has. The big tournaments for are in Asia. So all these regions do have people at high levels still playing the game. They just, what Sajam's talking about is having like an EVO where a lot of those regions come together to see what a top 8 would shape up to be and look like.
To be honest with you, as usual, probably not a very hot take, right? I think most of us agree that Granblue was in like a great spot to just have a slam dunk this year.
Despite all its setbacks, there's still hope for Granblue yet. It's not like the rock-solid gameplay that the game was praised for just went away. COVID might have disrupted the game's launch, but its solid foundation still remains. At its core,
I hate that the wording for it is COVID disrupted its launch, right? When COVID should have probably strengthened it if the developers were already doing what they needed to do for our communities in fighting games for years now, right? This isn't something new. For years, if the developers did what they needed to do when it came to having a fully functional game online for years, then this wouldn't be this. I don't even think this would be a video, right? So yeah,
Granblue is still an incredible offline fighting game with loads of potential.
What surprises me maybe most about the Granblue community, having been a part of many fighting games communities, is the number of people who are still in the community and this was their first fighting game. It's kind of astounding. I think that's a really cool aspect of how the game's community has developed.
It's unclear what the future holds for Granblue. The last confirmed DLC will release in December 2021, and there have been no announcements regarding future support or a sequel.
well, this was before that, but there is a future support happening for the game by the summer of 2022, and they did have people do a survey that asked what characters they'd like to have in the game. So this isn't the end. I really believe that they wouldn't do that if they were just kind of wrapping it up. I think they're wrapping up. I think the way they wrap this game up with like these 2 extra characters at the end of it, instead of announcing another whole season, it's a good foreshadowing of what's to come. I think they wrapped this up the way they did because they're building this even further in the future, and maybe with a different release, maybe with a version of the game that has rollback. That's my hope for this franchise.
There's also no evidence that Granblue will be added to Arc System Works Pro Circuit in the future. Still, Granblue will get its chance offline. The game has spots at CEO in December and Frosty Faustings in January. Organizers like Team Spookies and LBC have kept the game going online despite all the challenges that presents. In Japan, Granblue is still alive and kicking.
Yeah,
where events like
I just kind of mentioned this a little while ago, but yeah, like everybody, like even though you're not gonna see that many people playing online, you need, if you really want to play this game, you need to find some type of Granblue Discord, especially in your region, because there are regions that play this at a high level all over, like whether it be Spooky in New York or anybody else in Europe and other parts of North America and South America, and including this, the Rage, I think like it comes around, the Rage tournament comes around like twice a year at least, maybe. And yeah, there's still plenty of people playing the game.
Like Rage, have been able to continue unabated for the last 2 years.
But opportunities for online fighting games to coexist with offline fighting games is something that is really important. Having the potential that Granblue and its community, not just that the potential that exists in the game, but that the community members deserve the recognition, the opportunity that the community and its players, its tournament organizers, its commentators, everyone involved in the community work so far that has kept this game not just alive but thriving through the online era. They really do deserve a huge amount of recognition and a huge amount of support.
It's a tough place to be. There's passion in this community, a desire to compete, but also a feeling like they might have missed their one and only chance to enter the spotlight. Although the train may have passed by, Granblue is still a really good fighting game. Its mechanics and aesthetic are wonderfully polished, and if there's one thing we've learned on this channel, it's that a small group of dedicated players can sometimes be enough to keep a game alive. This video is made possible thanks to our wonderful patrons. Massive thank you to everyone on this list.
All right.
And shout out to Jason B.
Well, that was it. I hope you like what I had to say about the game. If you plan on buying it in the future, it's cheap now. Definitely suggest joining a type of Discord to try and get more games if you want to learn the game as well. Because from what I've noticed, when I do come in there and there are people, unfortunately there's a lot of times where I'm seeing master ranked or triple S ranked people always there in the ships, and then there's like a couple of C to F ranks straggling around, and I'm sure they're having a very difficult time or frustrating time if that's who they have to deal with, like the people that have consistently stayed on the game grinding it, when there's a couple of people that are brand new trying to learn the game. Let me hear your thoughts on where you're at with Granblue. For me, as for me and this channel, I don't see myself doing as much Granblue stuff as I did in the past. So anybody that supported this channel up until then, my apologies for that, but you know, we gotta keep it moving with stuff we're interested in order to make this an enjoyable hobby for ourselves here on our YouTube channel. So thanks again for listening in on my commentary on this video from Akshon Esports, and I'll be doing one more. That's the reason I'm doing this one, because I saw this one, but I'll be doing one more on a video game that I used to do on the last video game that I was competitive in, that I used to do content for a couple years back. So yeah, stay tuned, like, comment, subscribe, all that stuff. Let me know what you think down below on this, and support the channel. Thank you.